I need to be 25,000 feet by Logan. I'm cruising at 34, that means I've got 9,000 feet to lose. So remember that sum the other day where we multiply the height by 3. 9 multiplied by 3, or 9,000 feet, multiplied by 3 makes 27. So if I put a ring or a fix centered on Logan, and so I'm just going to come to the fix page here, Logan, for 27 miles / 27, and drop that in. That's going to give me this little notification there. And as I'm looking at my display and I'm seeing this dotted line coming ever closer to me, it's this little, there's something coming. Alright, so first of all, we're going to create our plan today for the top of descent. And we're going to do the same again, Frankfurt to Heathrow, just because it's a, it's a reasonably short flight that does allow us to get up to cruise. Alright, so first of all, we want to be on simbrief.com, and here we're going to create our flight plan. Now, nice and easy, but it'd be great if you could follow along. Come over to the dispatch, and again, doesn't matter if you've got Navigraph or not, the Simbrief will work just fine. Come over to new flights. I've not done one since the other day, since last doing a video, but that's the same. And it's the red boxes here we need to ensure that we fill out. So departure, Frankfurt is EDDF, and then arrival is EGLL, which is Heathrow. And so those are crucial. You can see I'm doing this on the 8th of October 2023. Aircraft type. So here's where you want to select what you have there. Because I add the planes that I have into my hangar here, it makes it a little, easier for me to go through. I'm going to go for the PMDG 737-700 because that's the one I've got. I'm not using the Zebo one in X-Plane. We're doing this in Flight Sim 2020. So once you've got these pieces of information in, just hit Generate Flight up here. That's going to put it all together. And then we should be able to access this. And so with the flight plan done, let's go ahead and get into Flight Sim 2020. Alright, welcome back. Here we are at cruise, flight level 340, 34,000 feet. And as you can see, we're still way off our end destination. In fact, if I zoom this out, see roughly where we began the tutorial the other day is about 320 miles or so. So first thing we're going to want to do is load up our flight plan. Now, if you haven't already done so, usually you do this before takeoff, but if you haven't, let's go ahead and do it. So looking at our arrival procedures from the flight plan, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So first thing, come over to your flights, view the flight plan, or if you've got some other way of doing this. By the way, I'm always chewing gum. Stopped smoking years ago, but I'm still on the gum stage. Not the nicotine, but gum. So if you're wondering why is he always chewing or swallowing, it's not that I'm eating all the time. I'm literally... Anyway, whatever. So, where are we here? Flight plan. So this would be on your page 2. The approach, as you can see, we're expecting Heathrow 27 left, EGLL 27L, the left side. Our final waypoint is Logan, and our approach or our arrival here is specified as a Logan 2 hotel. So that pretty much says everything we need to know there. Our flight plan from Frankfurt is here. It ends at Logan. We're then expecting the Logan 2 hotel arrival for runway 27 left at Heathrow. And so let's load these things up. So first of all, we've got Heathrow already selected here, the airport. So that's this one here. Let's in fact make this a bit bigger so we can review some of this now. So here's Heathrow, and here is runway 27 left down here on the lower right side. So that we're expecting the southerly runway that faces west. It's automatically as in this is Navigraph, has preloaded the Logan 2 hotel arrival because it does that now. It syncs with the flight. And taking a look at this, here we see Logan. Actually, there is a There's an optional, sometimes they call it vias or transitions here from Barbie, which appears to be further into the North Sea. We're not coming from Barbie. We're arriving directly here at Logan. And so, you know, that is if we was coming from, if you see here, they've got both of them, the Barmy 1 Hotel, the first waypoint of the arrival would be Barmy, but we're not. We're on the Logan 2 Hotel. Either way, both of them meet up at Logan. Also note here, we've got a hold option at Logan. We won't be holding there, but, you know, should it be very busy at Heathrow, you've got a stack out at Logan, you've got another one here at Sabre, another one at Brazo, and so on and so on. And so let's start loading this in. Now, again, as we discussed on the charts the other day, so familiarize yourself with that if you haven't, but we need to get from Logan to the runway 27 left. This arrival takes us from Logan to Lambourne. Lambourne here, this beacon. We then need to get Lambourne to 27 left. And again, it's not just a case of freestyling it. There is a procedure in place. So let's now go and look for the charts here from Heathrow. We're going to come to the approach page and we're going to select 27 left. We've already got our arrival here, the Logan 2 Hotel. And if not, you'd come over to the star page. You'd look down here for Logan 2 Hotel. And then it's actually here right at the top. Look, the Barmy 1 and the Logan 2 Hotel. You'd put a pin. You'd press this pin. If I press pin here, it appears down here. Watch. And I realize this is a PMDG tutorial, not a Navigraph tutorial, but that's how you make things appear and stay down there. That obviously resets when you do a new flight. And so we've got the arrival. We need that. Come over to the approach. We know 27 left, so we're going to come over here, ILS 27 left, and we're going to pin that one in as well. Coming over to the 27 left page now, we're going to take a quick look at this. Yes, it's the southerly runway. And again, just like the other day, it starts somewhere off the end. In this case, 7.5 miles off the end of runway 27 left. It does not start, if you look here, at Lambourne. And so we need to connect from Lambourne to 7.5 miles from the end of the runway. And to do that, if we come back to our star page, sometimes you will actually see it on the approach page. At different airports, it differs where they put it. Sometimes they put it in with the approaches. At Heathrow, they put it in with the stars. And if we scroll down, we've got these 4 initial approaches from Big, from BNN, from Lam, and from OC. But we're going to Lam, which is Lambourne, as we see there. So we need this one. And again, just pin it in. And so now we're all set. We've got our arrival. Let's get rid of this. We've got our arrival here at Logan. That takes us to Lambourne. We then got our initial approach from Lambourne here. That takes us again through this little S-turn to our initial approach for the southerly runway here, or 27 left. That final waypoint there, distance 7.5 from ILL, then is the same waypoint as this one here, distance 7.5 ILL, and that brings us all the way in. So it's all sewn up. That obviously brings us to the airport page, and we land here. Once we land here, clearly we're onto the ground charts from then on. So let's load this into the FMC. Now, some of this may have already been done, like say if you've done it ahead of time, which usually you would, but let's do away with that side menu. Let's assume that's not been done. So I'm going to come over to the plan page, and what you can do is on the legs page here, just I'm going to press page 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to come all the way here to where it says runway 27 left. And the reason I'm going to do that, or there, is so that the screen is centered, the preview screen is centered on the arrival airfield. I think Airbus does that for you. If you start messing with the approach, I think it takes you there if you're on plan view. Boeing does not. Boeing takes you at whatever page you've got on your legs. Now if you come to the apart arrivals and choose Heathrow, you can manipulate your approaches and actually get an idea of what you're seeing. And so I'm just going to pick something else deliberately. 9 right, big, 1Z via big, and bang. Okay, so I've got either no approach information in, or I've got the wrong approach information in. And so now, just legs page, I'm just going to jump through so you can see there's big, you know, it's incorrect with what we've done. And so whether you've got wrong information because it's gotten updated as you've gotten closer, whatever, or you haven't filled it in at all, let's go. So we've figured from our plan what we need on the charts. We now come to the depart arrival page. Let's just move this here and see if I can position the screen in such a way that we can basically see all of this at the same time. There we go, that'll do. And so the first one for Heathrow, EGLL, or wherever it is you're going, hit on the arrivals. And I find it most helpful to narrow down by the runway first. You can do the star first, but, you know, whatever you find most useful. Now we know, based on what we've been given today, it's 27 left. And so we're going to hit 27 left. If you're flying on VATSIM and you think it's going to be 27 left, but then as you get there, you see there's an ATIS controller on, and you have a little look and it says, oh, it's 27 right. Clearly, it's going to help you to change this as soon as possible so that when it gets real busy later in the day, you've got your ducks in a row. And so we set there 27 left. Now, arrival. We know we're coming through the Logan 2 hotel because we've just been through that. And so with 27 left selected on the right side, we're now going to look for Logan 2 on the left. We don't see it there, so we're going to have to press next page. Don't worry, it still remembers what we've selected on the right side. And here we see LOGA 2 hotel. That is the Logan 2. If you're ever unsure if it really is, just come to the top of your charts and you see here where it says Logan 2 hotel. Notice in the square brackets it says LOGA 2 hotel. That is because that is what will appear in your plane if you don't see the full Logan 2 hotel. And so, yeah, we've confirmed it's that one. And now it wants the transition. And again, we've been over this. We come to the initial approach. Again, initial approach, transition, via. They sometimes use these terms interchangeably. What we see here is, if we zoom out on this one again, is we're coming through Lambourne. This VOR beacon code LAM. And so transition, we don't see it there, so next page, here it is, LAM, bang. And so there we've got it. The Logan 2 hotel arrival, transitioning through Lambourne here, or LAM, takes us to ILS runway 27. Select, 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 yes, boom, exec. Now it's in. Now it's a case of verifying. So legs page, here we see it. Let's zoom out a little bit. So we're currently coming up to a waypoint called Breda. Let's step through and step once more. And now notice this on the FMC, the view here is centered at Logan. So again, Logan is the last waypoint of our route, the first waypoint of our arrival into London, and there we see it on display. And so if we zoom in now a little bit, let's see what information. I would see it says Logan FL360, so it wants us to be at 25,000 feet, and that will be, if we come to our arrival here page, Logan FL350, double lines, yeah, no higher, no lower, 25,000 feet. And so that matches. And if we come down here onto the FMC, you'll see that Logan speed it don't really care about, but here's the height again in magenta, that restriction 250, and so that's fine. So let's step through. This is now going to center it onto Sabre. That's this point here. Notice there's another restriction, flight level 160. No ifs, no buts. We've got that double there. And Sabre, there we see it, /1600, in this case 16,000 feet. That should really say flight level 160, And that's because we haven't yet put our descent forecast in. So let's go ahead and do that now, because this is going to start unraveling quite quick. I realized I went through how to read the stars on the, on the video the other day, the Navigraph video. But suffice to say, if all has gone well, all of the restrictions, the waypoints, the speeds, the heights, whatever, that are on the charts should automatically now all be loaded into this FMC. So let's come to the descent page, to the forecast page, and now we get to fill this up. Now, one of the things with the PMDG, I'm not sure if it works or not. You can get, I think it did, if I recall. You can request descent winds. I'm just going to do it manually because just why not? I know the Airbus fills it in automatically as well based on the winds. And so let's do this. Now we want to plan this as best we can. So first off, what is the pressure at Heathrow? We need to fill in the ISO deviation. I actually made a mistake last time. I said the ISO deviation was the difference from 14 degrees, which is correct. That is what it is. But then I went ahead and just put the normal temperature in, forgetting the distance. So the difference. So in other words, because the ISO deviation is based off 14 degrees, if it's 20 degrees outside, you don't actually put 20 in there. You would put 6. Yeah, because 14 is the standard. Plus 6 gives you the 20, but it might actually be, or whatever it really is. And again, last time I made the mistake and put 20, so, a little correction there. In any case, let's have a look. So the easiest way of Navigraph, I'd say, is just click on the airport down here. Click on weather. But again, use your phone, tablet, or even your charts. We'll take a look at the charts in a minute. So in this case, we see here Heathrow QNH 1025. So I'm just going to, actually let's put the full lot in. The temperature we see here is a very nice 22 degrees, which for, what are we actually on here? The, where's the date? Do I even have the date? Yeah, we do. The 8th of October. 22 degrees is very nice indeed. And so we'll put in a 22. We see it's actually defaulted to degrees centigrade, so we don't need to put in the C. / under QNH 1025 1025. And so put that in there. Now the aircraft knows the temperature and the pressure to expect, and it can do all its calculations accordingly. Now let's look at putting in the winds. And so let's hide the airport page, come over to the flights, view the flight plan, and you want to scroll down. I forget the exact page number, it's going to vary a bit anyway depending how long your flight plan is. But if you come after all your waypoints here, you'll see at the very end you get wind information. What you want to look at here, not the TOD, that's what winds are doing, actually where you begin the descent. You want to know through the whole descent, and that's this one here, the descent. The exact heights you're going to want to use depend on the height that you are doing. So we're currently at 34,000 feet. So it makes no sense for me to put in the winds at 35. If I was at 40,000 feet, I'd absolutely pick 35. If I was at 40, I think I'd pick 35,000, 20 and 10. As I'm at 34, I'm going to pick 3100, 20, 10 or 31, 20, 10. And so again, flight levels. So I'm just going to pick them now. I'm going to go 310, boom, then 200, boom, and then finally 100. 10,000 feet. And so with this now in, by the way, transition flight level, there we see 180. It's something that is normally changed automatically. I don't know why it isn't on the PMDG. Again, to get that figure, I was wondering the other day if it was on the arrivals page, and I'm thinking it maybe would be. And actually says there, transition level, yeah, set by ATC. Because we're not using ATC, I'm just going to go with 7,000 feet, which is flight level 70. So I'm going to put that in. Now notice we've got flight levels. Okay, exact that. So now with these heights in, we need to tell it the wind. So again, let's come away from that and focus on this wind before we get anything else done. 310, so 31,000 feet. Winds are 294 at 44. At least that was the forecast as and when we were departing. So again, 294/44. And that'll help the autopilot figure out how it needs to descend. versus not having this information. At 20,000 feet or at flight level 200, winds are 280 at 32. Usually they decrease as you go down. Sometimes, especially if you're very high, you actually find they increase for a little bit. And then at 10,000 feet, winds are 244 at 32 as well. So winds still at 32 knots, but actually swinging around from the south a little more. And so with that, we're all in. Okay, there we go. Up here, you can let it know if it is to expect anti-ice. Because if you need anti-ice, the engines need to run a little faster to power the anti-ice systems. That obviously produces a bit of thrust, and that basically tells the autopilot, you know, you're going to be expecting this. We are not. And so with that, we've got the winds in. Descent page sorted. Okay. Now let's come over to the progress page, because I want to figure out how far we got to go. And I think what's going to be most useful on this, if let's come back to the map view, zoom out. Remember, we've got that restriction at Logan at 25,000 feet off flight level 250. Again, let's show it on the old arrivals here. And so based off that, I need to be 25,000 feet by Logan. I don't need to worry about speed or anything. It's just 25,000 feet. I'm cruising at 34. That means I've got 9,000 feet to lose. So remember that sum the other day where we multiply the height by 3. 9 multiplied by 3, or 9,000 feet, multiplied by 3 makes 27. So if I put a ring or a fix centered on Logan, and so I'm just going to come to the fix page here, Logan, for 27 miles, /27, and drop that in. That's going to give me this little notification there. And as I'm looking at my display and I'm seeing this dotted line coming ever closer to me, it's this little, there's something coming. Oh, it's also, if we zoom in a little bit, let's come over to the legs page and plan view. And we'll just move the display over. Notice here, where I'm guesstimating 27 miles and where the autopilot wants us to descend, you see here is very, very close. TD is right there where my mouse is. There's where I've calculated. Maybe there's a mile difference, and that's probably, you know, to take into account for winds, or maybe the autopilot wants to descend, slow down a little bit or whatever. But you can see it's very, very close indeed. Also, if your plane is very heavy, fuel passengers actually need a bit more distance to descend. If you're very light, a bit less. So could also be some of that as well. Some other things to factor in then as we are arriving at London. Remember, it's an ILS approach. The Boeing does not auto-tune. In real life, you're going to want to, you know, hard tune some of these beacons like Lambourne, just in case there is a failure. If you want to do that, you know, in the sim, great, you know, dial it in 15.6. So, you know, let's do it my side, Lambourne 15.6. So here on the nav radio, 15.6, put that in on my side. And am I picking it up yet? Not yet. So you see a VOR one, so it's still outside of range, but I'll be expecting to pick that up soon. Because it, you know, usually you're going to be single pilot operations, I always find it easier, unless I really need to use the beacon for navigation purposes on, you know, what I call your side, I'd just go ahead and tune the ILS ahead of time. And so the ILS at Heathrow, again, that we're expecting 109.50. So I'm going to come to your side and just dial that in. 109.50. There we go. And to remind myself of the course, so in the heat of the moment, if I forget, 269 degrees, I'm going to go ahead and already dial that in on your side. So there we go. 269. Boom. Sorted. All right. Now, Several things are going to be taken care of. As you see, the top of descent is still a little while away. And again, if you ever sort of just want to really quickly have an idea, if you press on your progress page, you see here 2 TD or 2 top of descent, in this case 53 miles. Reckons we're going to get there at 19 minutes past 12 Zulu, which if we look over here is in around 7-8 minutes time. So it's creeping up on us. And again, if you want to adjust your cost index to give yourself more time on the final descent, now is the time to do it. You don't want to adjust your cost index when you're right on top of descent, or worse yet, when you're in the descent. Airbus actually blocks you from being able to change the cost index once you're near or in the descent. Boeing will let you do it, but basically all the calculations have already been done by then, so it's kind of pointless. And perhaps just to give ourselves a little bit more time for the tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and do it. So I'm going to come over to the index page, index again, performance. You see here cost index 20. I'm just going to knock it back to 5. Remember, 5 was actually in the forecast. And again, watch what happens to the top of this, as well as the speed and the top of descent. Exec. Speed's dropping back here, and now top of descent is even further away from our dotted line, and that's because, you know, we've got a much more gentle approach. Again, if we was to increase the cost index, that top of descent would actually go the other side. It would actually go inside the circle that we have drawn. Less efficient way of flying, but it goes faster. Right, we've actually got this notification here, unable 250 at Wesel. And so what that's saying is there's some sort of restrictions somehow at Wesel, wherever that is on the, you know, we'd have to go through it. And the FMC doesn't think, in fact, there we see it, max speed 250 at Wesel. And so the FMC actually thinks it's going to be faster than 250 for whatever reason. It doesn't think it can slow down to that extent. And so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Again, you're going to get a notification. It will request Airbrake or whatever if it can't, you know, get down and slow down quick enough. So, but we do need to, at least it's given us a heads up. Right, a few other things we want to do before we come down. We want to set the pressure. So we've already gotten the forecast. Let's just remind ourselves over here on the weather. QNH 1025. And so again, we can set that ahead of time as we saw in the other video. So we're just going to dial this one until we see 1025 below the height. There we go, 1025 is preset. We're still on standard, but once we go down and it starts flashing at us to remind us to change, as in the 7,000 foot or the flight level 70 transition that we set, you know, we hit standard and we'll be there. And we will look at the vertical profile today, seeing as we do have the waypoints. So again, hit center twice, and once we start descending, we'll see this nice. I'm just going to do away with it for now, just so we can see the top of descent approaching a little better. Here we go now, our final turn that takes us into Logan. And so at this point, you know, you'd have your seatbelts off, right? At this point, you would turn seatbelts, you know, when you're less than like a few minutes or so from top of descent. Just depends on the airline and how long the flight and how busy the flight crew are going to be, the weather or whatever. But usually you turn the signs on because, you know, there might still somebody be on toilet or whatever, and you want to give them a few minutes, you know, whatever, right? See, we don't have to think that far, but yeah. And so one last thing you want to try and get in before the top of descent is your performance. And again, we come over to the init on the left page. And so here we're going to choose flaps 15, 30 or 40. Again, we've been over this. Heathrow's a long runway. We see there 12,000 foot. We've got the ILS code there, 10950 to remind us, as well as the course. And here is the flap settings. Now on your side, yeah, you'd have the legs page. Now again, because we're quite light today, you may well elect to go for a flaps 15 at 134. You see we get 5 extra knots just to speed things in, or you may choose flaps 30. And from an airline's point of view, Flap 15, you're going to be saving quite a bit of fuel on that final approach because you've got less drag. But whatever, you know. And if you do want to go flaps 15, and let's just do it because we did flaps 30 the other day, you actually have to tell the plane, because the plane's going to start giving you a warning basically that you're not configured right. So you need to come over to the first officer's side. You actually even need to open this switch here, the flap inhibit switch, and enable that. And what that's going to tell the plane is, as you're coming down, to not bother you about an incorrect flap setting, and that's because we're landing with a flaps 15. If you've got an engine failure, you've got to go flaps 15 because single engine is unable to go around on a higher flap setting. So we're getting very close to the top of descent now. You can descend early, and what will happen is the autopilot will begin descending gently until it catches up with where it ideally wants you to be. So we will do that. And remember, our first restriction at Logan is 25,000 feet. What the autopilot is going to try and do, rather than descend and then level off at 25,000 feet, it's going to try and descend in such a way that the restriction at Logan, which is 25,000 feet, it's going to try and pass by it like that. So it descends straight through, but just touches the restriction at 25,000 feet as it passes. Obviously, if the next restriction is miles away, it will reach 25, level off, and then descend, you know, in the way that it sees fit. And again, today we're doing procedure LNAV, VNAV, so we're going to stick with it. But as we zoom in here, we see actually top of descent 8 miles or so away. And so we're going to get a notification any moment that says reset MCP altitude, or the master control panel up here, you know, so basically you need to wind this down or we're going to be stuck high and dry. And once it does that, you know, if air traffic control had cleared you down to 30,000 foot, that's what you'd set. If they cleared you down to 10, that's what you'd set. Usually, they're going to clear you down to the level that your next restriction is, or somewhere in between. If there's a lot of other traffic, they may descend, let's say, me down to 25, but the guy who's nearly behind me may descend them down to 26. And once I've gone through, then they'll descend that guy down to 25. And so here we see the MCP. There would have been a ding if I wasn't babbling, and you get this notification here. And so let's go down to 25. And you know, I said we could descend early. If you come to the descend page, hit descend now. Okay. And notice there we were descending a couple of miles early. Not really too far, but I was a little bit. And that's just so I can demonstrate here. Take a look at this. Again, our vertical deviation. Because we're descending early, it now says we're like 300 feet too low. But because it was only a couple of miles, look at this. We are catching up with where the autopilot would want to be already. Obviously, if you descend 10 miles early, this gap is going to be a bit bigger. And as soon as we catch up, which we've now done, autopilot is pitching down a little more. And so there we go. That's it. Taking a look out the window, realised didn't really do very much of this the other day. Here we see the southeast UK, and over there I think is the entry to the, or is it here? Can't quite tell from this view. Not clear enough. Press terrain, we might get an inkling. There's very little terrain, you know, hill-wise, but we should still see where the coast is if we wait. And there it is trying to draw. Perhaps this particular one doesn't draw the sea in. Never mind. Turn that off. And so yeah, I wanted to show now the center, so let's press it, center, so we see, and here we see, this is a perfect example of this. There's the flight restriction, Logan, flight level 250, and you can see here we're descending down, but we're basically bang on, look at that. And the autopilot prioritizes the height over the speed. So in other words, if there's a height restriction and a speed restriction, the autopilot is going to aim for the height restriction first. And if that means you end up going too fast, the autopilot will. Now, you can override that, obviously, and go for the speed. But the better way to deal with it would be to use, air brakes. And again, ideally, if you've got the winds right and it's accurate and the weight's right and everything, this should be as you can see here, a perfect idle, or flight idle as they call it, descent, and it should do it. This here is the perfect speed that the autopilot is ideally set for, and again, based on the cost index. If we'd had a higher cost index, this speed would be higher. And so the autopilot, again, if it's like a few feet low, it'll just slow down slightly below where this pink line ideally is. If it's a little high, it'll go a little faster, all the time keeping to the same height that it should be. You can see we're getting very close. Now, one thing, got a notification here, steep descent after Logan. One thing you can do, because we are in LNAV VNAV mode, and we do have all of these restrictions already programmed in. And if we come into the legs page, notice 250, there's a restriction here, flight level 160. We've got another restriction, you can tell they're restriction because they're in big numbers, 070. So if I dial this down all the way to 7,000 feet, which is 070, that will clear the autopilot all the way down, but the autopilot will still follow these restrictions here. And I just realized I knocked my throttle there. And so these restrictions will still be complied with. And so steep descent after Logan, let's just clear that, acknowledge. And you can see here why that is. You see it's descending nicely for Logan. If we extrapolate this line out, and if another way to do that is to just zoom out a little further, you can see here this line looks like it's going to slightly break the restriction at Sabre. Now again, the autopilot can just speed up a little bit and it will be able to comply with that restriction. Now if there is a speed restriction, like we said, that's when the autopilot can't necessarily do it by itself. So we're about Logan. I'm going to leave the recorder going. I'm just literally going to go AFK to walk across to the other side of my room. I just need a drink. Alright, thanks for bearing with us there. Just, usually have a bottle of water beside me when I'm... But I didn't. I can return. And so, yeah, we've gone through that 250. Look, that looks like it was just 200 or 300 feet ago. And we're now en route for Sabre flight level 160. And again, if I'd have left this at 250, the autopilot would have stayed there. It wouldn't have descended any further. Excuse me, fizzy water this one. Remember drinking fizzy water in Germany? It was called Hasja. It's actually what got me into fizzy water. You couldn't drink the tap water there. So Sabre flight level 160, we see this is being threaded nicely. And again, you may want to set up some of these fixes. So let's go ahead and do that. And in real life, you always want the, ideally one who's flying the descent, but you could also switch, but ideally one of them always has the descent page. So again, you've got a track of your vertical energy. Now you see here, we're actually now slightly faster than what the autopilot predicted, and so that's because we had to come down a little bit steeper, so the autopilot goes a little bit faster. But again, the faster you go, the more drag increases with the square of the speed. So it's not you go twice as fast as twice as much drag. No, you go twice as fast times 2, square 2, that's 4. So twice as fast, 4 times as much drag. And that's why that formula works. If you ease off, you get more energy. You go faster, you know, you lose energy more. In any case, let's turn this off for now. We'll zoom in a little bit here. See, it's getting close. Let's put in a couple of useful fixes then. So the first one, if we come into the, let's just use the initial approach. I think this one, does it have it on this page? Actually, yes, it does. We see the whole pie here, London VOR. It's in big. There's the 2200. And I know from the other day when we did this, there's 2100. But again, if you weren't sure, come over to the ILS page and you get that up there again in a much smaller, cohesive way. Actually got the drag required message here. So it's basically saying to get down and to slow down, you know, everything that we want to do, hit drag. And they say, no, I'm not concerned that we're exceeding 243 knots. Again, that's not a restriction, just based on the cost index. The first restriction is here, Wesel 250. So I'm just going to clear that message for now. Let's come over to the fix pages. We'll just do this again for practice. So come over to a blank. Again, we made use of Logan. By the way, Logan was our descent fix that we did, so we don't really need that anymore. So we may as well override that one. So let's go LON for London. It's going to be the top one, as we see London, not just because it's the top, but the top is always the closest. And then again, 25 miles for the MSA. I'm not going to go ahead and fill all the radials in again. If you want to know how to do that, again, refer to the other one. So that's that one. Next page. Let's now get the runway in. So we know here is runway 27 left. So RW 27 left. And let's put 2 rings in this time. Because again, this is something the Airbus can't do. And, you know, just because it can't do it, let's show it. And so again, we want the 5-mile ring as a standard sort of a thing. So we're going to put that in. But notice here, we've got a distance 7.5. Now, that is the beginning of our final descent at 2,500 feet. And so let's put a ring there just to make it more obvious. And so we'll put a /7.5. Drop that in. And now there will be 2 circles. That first circle at 7.5, that's the start of our final approach. And the second one at 5 miles, which is, you know, wheels down. If we wanted, we could even put in a third, but I think that will do. One thing we want to familiarize ourselves with now is what happens if we have to go missed. We can see here, climb straight ahead when passing 1,080 feet or distance 00 from the ILS. So in other words, if we're 1,000 or 1,100 feet and we're over the ILS beacon, whichever is later, so it wants both to be true, then climb and turn left onto a heading of 147 degrees to 2,000 feet. So interesting, we are approaching 270. Left turn 147. It's actually quite a sharp turn. It's not quite 180 degrees, but it's most of the way. And it wants us to go there to 2,000 feet. So we climb up to 2. Once we are 6 miles away from London VOR, climb without delay to 3,000 feet, then as directed. And so here we see missed approach procedure, left turn 147 degrees, up to 2,000 feet. Once we are here, distance London, there's a reminder, 6 miles away, then up to 3. Now this will be indicated on the ND, so you don't got to remember all that. But what you do ideally want to remember is, right, so left turn to 147, up to 2,000, at least initially. And so when you're going down, we'll set that 2,000. Reminder there, it's a flaps 15 at 134. And at this point, if you haven't already, you know, seatbelt signs long since want to be on. Turn off lights, I always put those on when I start the descent. Wing lights, same again. I should have turned that off for cruise, but I didn't. Put the logo light on as well, because, you know, we're going to be getting busy there. Landing altitude, we didn't do that yet, so again, we should have really done this before the descent. So Heathrow, and we're looking here for airport elevation 83. So again, we're going to round that off to 100 feet, the nearest 50. And so that is all there. Autobrake, we may as well decide this now while we've got a bit of time. Come back to the legs page here. And again, normally you'd have init page on who's flying, landing, and legs on the other. But just because when you single operation, you're using your legs more than the other one. You know, if anything, why not do it the other way on? It's just so, you know, if you're flying or in charge of flying and air traffic control says, hey, PMDG 737, proceed direct landworth, it's not you that then lets go and types in direct land board. You know, it's the other guy that does that. You then confirm it, yeah, and that's it. Right, so AutoLand, as we said, it's you know, it's a very long runway. So again, I'm going to go for the minimum Autobrake. I'm actually going to go for setting 2 because, you know me, I still haven't sorted out my reverse button. Yeah, I will one day remember to do it. I'm not about to break off the tutorial to set it and then carry on and Right, bit more gum then. And so here's this first green dotted line, 25 miles. And that, of course, enters that protected area of the pie with the MSA, like we were talking about this here. And again, we are again approaching from, well, today in easterly direction. But either way, 2,100 feet still applies to us today. And because we checked all of this ahead of time, or should have done, the aircraft procedures with the charts, it's not like we need to continuously monitor or nurse every single thing the whole time. It will follow what we told it to do unless it's telling us that it can't do it. So here we are falling through 10,000, and so with that landing lights on, and you know, if you've got 4 set of landing lights, you know, the other ones are used for your clear to land. This one doesn't just has the 2, but going to use the taxi light for the clear to land. So the taxi light obviously will turn the nose wheel light on as well, and they'll be able to see that outside. But it's also a mental, have we been clear to land or not? And as soon as they say clear to land, whether it's, you know, 30 seconds away from the runway or 10 minutes away, we turn that light on and that reminds us we are definitely clear to land. There's no way of confusing it. You don't get clear to land, you don't turn the light on, and that's it. So we're getting close to 7,000 feet, where obviously the autopilot's going to stop descending because we've set it to 7,000. I'm just going to be really lazy and carry on winding it all the way down. Now remember, our final approach fix, our final waypoint that begins the ILS, is at 2,500 feet. And again, if you want to verify that, come to your ILS page, look for where your final approach fix is. That's this little weird symbol here, and check the height, 2,500. And so I'm going to have the autopilot take us down there. I've also forgotten to increase the bank angle limit up to 25. By the way, LNAV VNAV ignores that bank angle limit. That's just for if I manually go ahead in, then it will stick to that bank angle. And if you're at cruise, it should be at 10, and the rest of the time basically 25. Unless, you know, there's a reason not to, and sometimes there are. Very heavy turbulence, for example, you may ease it off a bit so it doesn't risk throwing the plane further over, whatever. So that's set to 25. Minimums we didn't sense. That's something else you ought to try and get in as early as possible. And again, it's a lot quicker to do these things than it is explain them all in detail. And so coming down to the bottom of the page, again, we are Category C aircraft. We're just going to go for the Category 1 ILS, and it's clear. And again, 200, we see it there on the radio height in the small, or 277 if we're doing barometric. And so coming to this dial here where it says minimums, you see it's set to the baro because, well, I used it for a departure. So coming over, press it to the landing. See, the default there is 50. So I'm going to wind that up to 200. You could, of course, elect to go Category 2 and set it to 100. Or Category 3 and keep it at 50. But I'm going to go... There we go. 200. So the autopilot here, if we zoom in, is electing to keep it level. Speed, you know, a very nice, manageable. In real life, you probably won't come down with a cost index of 1. Oh, you know, whatever. Or 5 or whatever it was. But, you know, if you were to do this on VATSIM, aside, yeah, you would probably upset people. Just wonder, is there... Oh, there is actually a 220 knots speed restriction here, so I take that back. But, yeah. Now, as we're going to start needing flaps shortly after 200 knots. And flaps 1, 2, 5, you can actually put out at 250 knots, although they recommend not really doing it till you're sort of less than 240. Some even say 230, whatever. Either way, you can put it out up to 250. Notice now we've got this notification, this changeover, because we're right around that mark. And so, standard, we already pre-dialed the QNH to 2025. Obviously, it'd be checking if there's an update. And here now we continue descending. Per the LNAV, VNAV, autopilot's following it, nice. Usually you arm the speed brakes once you're on final approach, no sooner. I guess we'll be in keeping with that. We're getting pretty close now, 6,000 feet. Actually, this very thin cloud layer that's obscuring the view, but basically, so I don't forget, let's go ahead, seat the cabin crew. And I'm also going to set the engine relight switches to continuous. Again, something else you do on final approach, but I'm just going to do that here and now so I don't forget. Everything else there is set. Reminder, here we see this, actually let's zoom out and perhaps it'll be a little more obvious. Yeah, so remember if we go missed, it's a left turn, so we see here this magenta line following in final approach, and then this blue dotted line is missed. We've got these reminders here that, you know, this one here actually says 3,000 feet on it, so remember it's up to 2,000 feet. And once we reach that dot, then it's up to 3. And so once we begin our final descent at 2,500 feet there, I'm actually going to, once we capture the approach, I'm going to wind that down to 2,000, just in case we do go missed, to remind ourselves of that. Just move this up out the way a little bit. And again, zoom in. And again, if any time, you know, center display twice. And here we see this vertical profile. You can see there's a waypoint here, D1260, which I think is D1260, as in a letter O. Again, beyond the scope of this video, but it's basically a waypoint based off a beacon. We see the restriction there, 6,000 feet or above. And you can see here the autopilot is gingerly taking it down to 6,000. You can bet your bottom dollar as soon as it crosses that restriction, it's going to want to nose over again. Notice here we can see where it wants us to catch up. So let's see how it does it. We're just over 1.5 miles away. There's 6,000. See, it's pulling the power back. Look at the speed here starting to deteriorate. It's holding the aircraft level, and there it's through the restriction, nose down, and now it's going to go down and catch up. Notice we've got 180 speed restriction here. This is going to crop on us mighty quick. So I'm going to go flaps 2. Maybe even actually flaps 5. What did I get select there? Well, I didn't want flaps 10. And so I'm going to use the flaps 5, even though I don't need them for lift. I'm going to use them as a little bit of an air brake because I've got 1.5 miles to get down to 180. That's never going to happen. So let's get the air brakes out. There we go. Probably still going to bust through this restriction. I'm very surprised. Oh, it has now asked for drag. I'm really surprised it didn't ask for drag before. We have basically broken through that restriction. So that crept up on me a little bit there. Zooming in a little bit, you can see here on the turn to final. And if you haven't already, you really now need to have the ILS frequency tuned in. So just looking there to remind ourselves, 109.50, 109.50, and it's now on my side and your side. Gonna check now, are we receiving the ILS? And here we see it's tuned in, but we're not yet receiving it. As soon as we receive it, you'll actually see that code. And the code is, I think it was it ILL or something like that. Yeah, ILL. Again, there you see it, ILL. So there it is. We've got it now, ILL 246. So that's basically confirmed that you've got it. And we see here we're almost in line with the runway. So I'm going to go ahead and arm the approach already. We'll get the I'll just go get the heading to match up as well, 269. So this now is all set. We're carrying on to descend to 2,500 feet. And I think we've basically done what we need to do there with the air brakes. So here we are at flaps 5 speed. Let's go for 160, just a bit slow. And again, even though we are descending to 2,500 feet, look here, VOR loc. It's captured the ILS steering wise. GS there, that means it's captured the ILS glide slope. So we could put anything in here now and it's just going to ignore it because we are now actually on final approach. I could actually press the second one here. This would arm the AutoLand. I'm going to reduce the height to 2,000 because that's our missed approach height. And I'm going to carry on now with our approach speed. 5 knot correction, forgot to set that. So our approach speed today, 134 plus 5 makes it 139. And if we look out the window, there we see the runway. So I'm going to go for flaps 10. And I'm going to use the flaps 10 to slow us down 2,500. Just a little. And I'm going to get rid of this display now because we know we've got it. So these were these rings we've drawn. So there's the 7.5 mile ring. So that was the begin of our final descent from 2,500 feet. And then this is the 5 mile ring, which is, you know, as I like to say, my gear down flaps 15 if I haven't already. But see, we're very close. Let's just assume now ATC clears us to land. So we'll put that on. And, you know, we'll just ding dong back there to let them know, you know, it's time. All right, let's do this early then. So let's go gear down, flaps 15. And with that set, we're going to book now to our approach speed. Remember, 134 for flaps 15 plus the 5 knots is 139. So we'll set that according. And so now all it remains to do, arm the speed brakes. There we go. So we've got the speed brakes arm light. And so let's now do the landing checklist. Gear down, flaps set. We're doing flaps 15. Autobrake set in this case 2. Speed brake armed. We've got green. We're clear to land. Engine lights, engine start switches, I beg your pardon, continuous. All the other lights are on. Signs are on. You know, approach is stable. AutoLand, everything there looking good. Interesting here that we're getting a flashing light at 139. That was the approach speed. Well, we'll leave it there regardless.
1,000.
Actually now down to 133, so if we add 8 knots on, that would actually 5 knots. That'd be 138, but regardless. And again, this is an AutoLand in theory. We'll see how it goes. See there that the flare is armed in white, so that means it's, you know, it's going to follow it down and then try and flare. The timer here ticking down. Not the timer, but the radio height. Let's reset the view. There we go. No. Okay. Trying to give you a view that shows both. So we got the 2 red, 2 whites doing perfect here. Nice 10 knot headwind.
300.
Actually, a plane there on the runway. We're not going to worry about that.
Airspeed low. Airspeed low.
Well, we had approach minimums and minimums. That airspeed, again, there's a bit of turbulence with the wind, but minimums, we see it's in yellow, so if we couldn't see the runway, we would now have to go down, around, I beg your pardon. Not down.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10.
Wow, that was butter, wasn't it? From the autopilot. Now, in theory, the autopilot will keep it on the runway. It's actually doing a terrible job. AutoLand should keep it on the runway. Actually taking over the controls there. I'm not sure what's wrong. Just as well it veered to the right, helps us dodge this guy. And again, the reversers, not my job, but you see here, Autobrake's doing its thing. We've got the trend vector going down. AutoLand, really, once you're happy with it and you want to take over, you'd have to disconnect. I'm just going to press that one there. And now it's my, you know, it's my plane. I'm just going to squeeze the brakes to get rid of the auto brake there. And with that, we have vacated runway 27 left. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Heathrow. I hope you found that tutorial informative. And until next time, wherever in the world you may be, from me here on Internet Flight Rules, take care. Ta-ra.